Ready, and press play, and action. People that know me probably know that I'm a big sci-fi nerd. It's my favorite genre. I love old 70s sci-fi movies. So I wanted to make something that brought some of that old school aesthetic to bear. And I think we managed to do that with Fly Home. I did have a very early concept for a short film, didn't have a particular length in mind, about a space man or astronaut who was in a cockpit of a spaceship being bothered by a fly. I had a chat though with model maker Andrew Glazebrook, and he had this model of a space station built into the side of an asteroid, and it gave me a few more ideas. It gave me that push, and then I went, actually no, it's not in a space craft, it's now going to be on this space station, he's alone, and the ideas started to come from that point.
Since growing up in the 1970s, and this was before Star Wars, I was a big fan of all of the Jerry Anderson shows like Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet, and of course Star Wars came along. And then I started doing computer graphics, which ended up doing some stuff for TV, for the BBC. But then I just kind of got really fed up with computer graphics and ended up going back to doing the sort of things that really interested me when I was young. Drawing, making things, makeups, anything like that, which was physical, because I just kind of think that people respond sort of better, more to the physical aspects of things as opposed to just, oh, it was done in the computer. The amount of people who would contact me and say, hey, we're doing a movie and we want some spaceships making and things like that. There's very few people, who would come along and sort of say, well, I've got a storyboard, I've got a script. We've started building stuff, things like that. And Josh was one of those who actually, did have things planned and up and running.
So this is like a workaday guy who finds himself in space on a space station, a very remote space station. He's been there for a little while. He's left a family, and what you imagine is a young kid at home. The only thing he's got is this picture. This one little picture that the kid's drawn, you assume basically just before he's left. I can imagine like the weight of that would be like unbearable, especially if you're just like out there on your own. This is the only thing you've got to link you back to your family, and it's taken away from you is kind of like an immeasurable loss, I imagine.
What gave me the impetus to go and make the movie was a competition called Straight 8, which is a UK competition that allows people to make one film, which is maybe about 3 minutes 20, because that's the length of a Super 8 cartridge. Then you send that away, they develop it, whatever was shot in sequence, and then that's it. And you supply the soundtrack blind. I knew that this would have been the perfect length for Fly Home. So I sort of connected the two and went, actually, right, I'm going to do this film, which is supposed to be in a 70s style with something that was very popular in the 70s, which is 8mm.
Certain projects I just like to say, hey, I don't mind just helping out because that looks like a really fun project, and the fact that part of it was getting shot on Super 8 is, and then the other part was going to be digital cameras, and that was the fun part of it for me. I
was having a conversation with Paul Dubois, who's a producer who works in London. I just happened to say, oh, by the way, in the meantime, I'm going to work on this little short film, Fly Home. I've got a storyboard, and while I was on the call with him, he asked me to just send it over, and he watched it right there on the phone call with me, which was amazing. But he enjoyed the storyboard. Not even a video, he enjoyed the storyboard so much that he agreed to fund us for a small amount to help get the production on its feet. And I think at that point I really knew, aha, maybe I have got something here. So for Fly Home, I've been lucky enough to work with my dad. I'm privileged to be working with my dad. It's a really nice feeling.
My background working as a composer is with ensembles like string quartets, wind quintets and so on, quite traditional formats. But I've also worked with dance companies, theatre companies, creating acoustic and electronic scores. Working with Josh, my son, is quite an interesting thing because actually it's quite an easy thing to do because we've been working together for a long time. So that feels quite natural. It's a pleasure and it's also fun. When it comes to details, making changes and talking through sort of rationale for changes, that's quite professional and disciplined. The first encounter with the film was when Josh sent me the storyboard. It was all pretty clearly mapped out. And then the next step was just to think about what music might be suitable, but also just what comes to you in response to having seen the storyboard. What it did need or was asking for was a completely kind of sort of orchestral job on it, you know, that lends itself to the film because the film is also a kind of a strange mix of a kind of mock epic because of the comedic elements in it. But actually probably the most fruitful idea which is absurdly simple, but it's just related to the title of the film, Fly Home. What's the simplest way of representing that is just to go fly home. And from that point, I think a lot of the music started to just to spill out, really.
The set building was probably, it was the most daunting part. So I'd already met with Andrew, who was making, who had the models that we needed for it. They were already made, they just hadn't been used in anything yet. And he was definitely going to help to dress the set. But we needed to get to the point where it could be dressed, because this whole set is just brick wall. It's my garage, it's brick walls and, you know, crap that was left over from the previous tenants.
We're sitting in that garage right now. This incredible set that was put together by Andrew Glazebrook is just amazing, which definitely helped me to immerse myself as if I'm like living on a spaceship. To tell you the truth, Josh has still had it up for like the last 2 months since we finished shooting, and I'm pretty sure he comes in here and like just sits and thinks about being in space. I'm pretty sure, I mean, I would, definitely.
So we did get to a point where it was no longer an empty shell, and it started to have the semblance of something. And then when we did the test shoot, Andrew turned up and turned it into something amazing.
I've always just been like a huge hoarder of vacuum form packaging and just bits and pieces. So I had stuff here, I had stuff at home, much to my wife's annoyance, like with packets of biscuits, like, hey, that's great, you know, keep those.
Everybody involved in this project, including myself, is like crazy about film in general. So getting to work with like old school kit and stuff was really, really exciting. I remember that we did a lot of rehearsal. We did like a full couple of days of rehearsal where we got an 8mm tape and basically shot some stuff, and Josh just didn't know whether or not anything would come out because he's so used to working on digital. So he was like crazy nervous and apprehensive like the whole day. I knew that everything would work out fine, but shooting on film is just, I think, like a very magical thing to be doing now when like everything is on digital. It's just really exciting.
You know, we knew there were going to be challenges. For instance, we had loads of sync sound. There's no dialogue, but he is going to be flipping switches. Things are going to be sliding, flashing. There's like sonar beeps that all have to sync up with the action on the screen, which meant that if we're going to submit the soundtrack blind and they just line the soundtrack up to the beginning of our cartridge, that's going to work. So we had an ingenious, I want to say, solution to it. The 8mm camera rolling when it rolls, but also to have a digital camera filming the 8mm rolling. When I click the trigger on the 8mm camera, the digital camera can hear it, and we know when the trigger was pressed, just as a reference point for how long every take was. So if, working on film and having a backup camera and all that wasn't, daunting enough, I knew in my heart that I would never forgive myself if the 8mm didn't work for some reason, or I don't know, whatever reason. The film doesn't need a reason to fail. So I decided that we would film a digital copy as well, something on a nice camera that we would have to film alongside our 8mm. So at least we'd come away with a product that we could be proud of and watch at our leisure. And just to tack on there, by the way, that means we already now have 3 cameras in my tiny garage.
I've never really done anything like it before. I've done little acting jobs before. This is the most major thing I've done. And especially it was especially a challenge because essentially there's no dialogue in the 3-minute film. So trying to convey like every emotion, and it's pretty much like a roller coaster of emotion during the film. So having to convey all of that without any dialogue was probably the biggest challenge, and it was really, really fun to overcome. And I had great support from Josh, the director, and it was just, great fun. We had some really good discussion about really trying to think about everything that's happened in his life up to that point, because all you see is 3 minutes while he's started his day at work. He's flipping some switches and stuff, and then everything that happens in the film happens. But we talked a lot about what he's really feeling.
I really like the opportunity to work on a short film where there's no dialogue. There is this sort of feeling that you can punctuate things in a way that you wouldn't do if dialogue was intervening,
The night before the shoot, I'm currently gluing the space station to the glass in front of the nebula already, because that takes a bit of time. And I hear a thud. Now, I will say this, there were pillows underneath it, but it missed those. And it landed smack on the floor.
Josh sent me a photograph, and then suddenly there was another photograph, and then the model was in bits, and he's like, it's fallen over, it's in bits. Most of the bits were there, but I think he was a bit more panicked than I actually was about it. It was a case of, don't worry about it. I think if it had been something purposely made and it had been like 10 times as big and stuff like that, but no, we made it work, so it's all right. I didn't lose any sleep. Josh maybe did, but I didn't.
Here we go. Right, I'll have to get in where you are.
Nice.
Action, George. Okay, 3, 2, 1, fire. And cut. I like that. Yeah, hand out is good. This time, fire and take your hand out. Okay. Stand by. Action. You don't know how long the camera is going to run for exactly on set, so you have to kind of, every time you do a take, you have to count with the camera to make sure is this shot going to be 2 seconds, 3 seconds? What was it in the storyboard? One more. Does that feel a little bit too short?
No. There are several key things I need to be doing, and things I need to be firing. This is all about the vents, which you'll see in the movie. These lights mean danger. These lights also mean danger. These lights mean danger. This, on top of here, is where I sleep. This is my coffee. So you can see the bots on the ship make the most disgusting coffee. Jeff Goldblum. Oh! I'd like to introduce my good friend Jeff, the most unbelievable, incredibly detailed puppet designed by Mr. Andrew Glazebrook. It's going to win every single award. He's beautiful.
Yeah, so we had this fly. I literally sort of carved it from a piece of 2 pieces of balsa wood and made some little wire legs and made some little wings out of acetate, which I painted and stuff. And then Josh had these magnets so we could magnetize it and run another magnet underneath, so you're puppeteering this little fly. It's also interesting, as in the couple of times when we were sort of trying it out, the fly dropped off the magnet, and you're thinking that can't happen on the Super 8. It can happen on the digital as much as it wants, but on the Super 8 one, everything just got to be so spot on.
Ready, stand by, and action, George.
Do you want me to put that on to see what?
Yeah, I'd like that, please. Okay. Roll camera.
Alright.
Okay.
I was going to say, you want to open the door and get some of the smoke out, and then...
That's not going to help.
Sorry, Andrew.
Josh, the director, Josh Kerr, is my best friend. He asked me to be involved in this, and I think I'm unbelievably lucky, like crazy privileged to be working, because he's insanely talented, and he's got like an amazing group of people together on this thing. He got Liam Walker involved, and I've never worked with him before. He was fantastic. He made me feel like super at ease. Just like as a relatively fresh actor that doesn't have a lot of experience, getting to work with so many like super friendly, talented people, I just feel like crazy lucky.
I've worked with Liam for the past few years, and Andrew is a dear friend of mine. He's been someone I've known for a great long time. Liam, who was responsible for the main digital version, the 4K version of the movie, and Andrew was the one involved with the behind the scenes, isn't it?
That's what we'll say.
Alright, so how did we do with the 5 seconds of the fly then?
That's what I'm doing next. I do it clip by clip so it doesn't get confusing.
That's the fun you're in. Also
I didn't sign up for this.
It's really good just being in that room with other people. You know, if I can hold a light stand, I'll hold a light stand, or work the smoke machine, or whatever, you know. It's just a case of helping out, because everybody needs to sort of chip in because of the low budget nature of it.
cap goes down.
When his cap goes down.
Or at least when he reaches for it. What we have now is a 8mm cartridge that's away 3-4 months before we know what we have. Anyway, what we do have is a very killer digital version that was edited by Jack McBride, who is a wizard editor, and I can't wait for that then to go into the festivals as well. So I suppose what we have at the end of this is 2 films that should be semi-identical going out at the same time. You know what? The only other person who's filmed digital and film at the same time that I know of is Tommy Wiseau. So I don't know what to think of that. That's probably not good.